to reading number 1 of writers featured in Glass Lyre Press's Aeolian Harp Anthology Volume VI. Today's reading will feature Vince Gotera, Mary B. Moore, Meg Harris, and Alexis Rhone Fancher. Some of these writers, and also those in reading number 2 on May 6th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, will be reading one poem each by Joan Colby, whose work was also featured in this volume. This volume was dedicated to her memory. Joan was a kind friend and mentor to many of us, including me. The poetry world mourns her absence. Before I introduce the first reader, I'll read her poem, A Time to Mourn and Time to Dance. We gather in private rooms to eat and drink to the memory of too many friends these days of onrushing mortality. Each of us is expected to offer a recollection, profound or funny, too often lapsing into bathos. Some get teary, others cheery. A glass raised, so long, rends the heart more than impassioned speeches. We should be on beaches with bonfires and the slow waves licking the tide line, while someone with a guitar strikes up a sad and lonely melody. We should dance to enclose you, lost friends, our bodies pressed together. Vince Gotera teaches at the University of Northern Iowa, where he served as editor of the North American Review from 2000 to 2016. He also edited Starline, the print journal of the International Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association from 2017 to 2020. His poetry collections include Dragonfly, Ghost Wars, Fighting Kite, The Coolest Month, and the upcoming Pacific Crossing. His work has featured in Altered Reality Magazine, Crab Orchard Review, Dreams and Nightmares, the Ekphrastic Review, Philippines Graphic, Rosebud, The Wild Word, and the anthologies Multiverse, Dear America, Hai Naku 15. He blogs at The Man with the Blue Guitar. Take it away, Vince.
Thank you, Robbi. It's so nice of you to have organized this event, and also I love how you're honoring Joan Colby from our anthology. I published Joan years ago in the North American Review, and thank you for asking me if I would read a poem, and I am glad to allow others who knew her to read. My poems in Aeolian Harp VI are from a novel and poems that I'm writing. And in fact, it just so happens that I wrote the last poem in that series yesterday. And I am going to be now revising the entire book. First let me explain about the novel is about aswang, which are mythical Philippine monsters. And looking into the folklore over the years, I've noticed that the aswang are always portrayed in stories and mythology as simply as monsters and not as people with inner lives. And so I began to think about writing something, from their own points of view. And Aswang monsters are vampires and shapeshifters and ghouls, and they during the day live as regular humans, but then at night transform. And so here is the first poem. Encounter on Good Friday. In Katood village, north of Manila, 1936. On his straw mat, his banig, under the inky susurrus of the mosquito net hung from the walls of his nipa hut, a bachelor farmer named Santiago de la Cruz lounges half asleep, half dreaming of the Easter sunrise mass, day after tomorrow, and of today's penitentes flogging their own backs into bloody crosshatch, a couple crucified for a handful of long minutes. Tiago gazes upward toward the now charcoal-tinged underside of his thatched palm leaf roof and starts at an indistinct shadow above, shaped darkly like a crucified person. What? Tiago rolls out of the net and fixes his eyes above. Yes, there is something there in the pitch black. Wait, is it a dark brown woman with her arms outstretched, gripping the almost invisible bamboo supports of the roof? A ghost? A hallucination? Tiago rubs his eyes and looks again. Her eyes are dark red like dying coals. He crosses himself quickly, notices a rippling behind her like a morning dress curtain. Sus Mariosa, Tiago whispers. She got wings like a bat. He slowly realizes there is nothing below her waist but a few brackish red loops of, what, guts? Torn intestines? Wait, it's not a whole figure. She has no legs. No legs. Oh my Jesus, an aswang. Putang ina, she's a manananggal. The aswang smiles, teeth a dingy slate gray, and from her mouth slips a dingy blood-red thing like a snake, or maybe more like a thick, dark earthworm that writhes wildly closer and closer to Tiago. It's her tongue, a 10-foot long tongue. Hold on, she's trying to suck my blood, the black harpy. He clenches his arms, his fists, shuts his eyes hard. The aswang's tongue slinks, inches, nearer to his neck. His body, in the shadowy center of the room, seems to sprout fur, arms and legs thinning and crackling into wolf-like limbs. Tiago is growing taller and bulkier, t-shirt and boxers ripping apart like tissue. He growls, dark yellowish fangs flashing out of the lengthening snout of his face. Tiago is also an aswang, a shapeshifter churning into a huge black dog, larger than a man, standing wide on hind legs. The two monsters growl and snarl at each other, a tableau carved into the dusky, sweaty air of the room. Then it stops. Both of them laugh. They snicker and snort, convulse in dark shrieks and screams of black humor. The manananggal pulls in her slimy tongue, waves at Tiago and swoops out of the window, her pterodactyl wings sighing velvety tick-tick, walk-walk sounds. Tiago lifts his noble black head to the heavens and howls. I wrote that poem as part of NaPoWriMo some years ago, quite a few years ago, actually. And people responding to the poem said to me, wrote in comments, you should write the other side of the story from her point of view. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. And then after I did that, this poem coming up, after I did that, it occurred to me that it was actually an entire story and a novel about their love affair and their life together. Here's the second poem from her point of view. How Clara Met Santiago, a pantoum. So there's Santiago de la Cruz in his bedroom sleeping. I'd been watching Tiago from a distance for many days, so handsome, his black hair glowing in the sunlight when I would see him at market selling his vegetables. I'd been watching Tiago from a distance for many days, and tonight I decided I would visit him, see him at home, and not just when he's at market selling his vegetables. So I split my body, breaking in half as usual at the waist, Since tonight I decided I would visit him, see him at home. I stood in my bedroom, slowly unfurling wet black wings as I split my body, ripping in half painfully at the waist. Then I looked towards the wide, beautiful moon, so free, after long minutes in my room unfurling my wet wings. I launched myself into night air and headed into the sky, then flew toward Tiago's house, so beautiful, so free. The village was lovely, candle lamps glowing in windows. I turned myself toward the earth, falling out of the sky and alighted gently, so gently, on his woven thatch roof. His house was lovely, a lamp gleaming in his window. I took care not to upset even the flame as I entered and floated gently, so gently, up near the woven roof. Now I watch Tiago, his sweat glistening as he lies in bed. I took care not to awaken or disturb him as I entered, but now his eyes open, dark brown irises glowing. I watch Tiago. I keep very still. He lightly stirs in bed. I stay as still as I can, my wings slowly fluttering. His eyes are open and staring, brown irises growing, and then I see he has spotted me. He can see me. I stay as still as I can, slow my wings fluttering. From the way Tiago's brows knit, his arms tense, I know he has definitely spotted me. Can he see me? Trying to blend into dark ceiling, blend into black. Then his brows go more black. His arms tensed with spreading, darkening fur, his teeth growing long. I try to hide in the ceiling. His body grows black and blacker. His body contorts into a giant dog with thick fur, feet and hands clawed, fangs long. Then I realize the truth. We're both Aswang. We both start to laugh and laugh, this huge man dog and I. Waving blithely to him, I turn to fly away. This truth will open up our lives. We're both Aswang. He's so handsome, black fur shining in the moonlight. Knowing I will see him again, I turn to fly away. And there's my Tiago, head up to the sky, howling. Well, many adventures ensue after that. And there's a moment in the book where the villagers, Clara's villagers, there's a kind of Frankenstein, pitchforks and torches moment where they are after her because it's been discovered that she's an Aswang, and Santiago rescues her, and then they end up getting married. One second, I lost my place here. This is called Aswang Wedding, early Saturday moon. The Aswang lovers held each other's hand, kneeling at the teakwood communion rail of La Iglesia de San Agustin, the simple granite-walled Spanish chapel, not far from the shores of Manila Bay. Heads lowered, the humble country couple waited while the parish priest, Padre Ray, drowsy, wished he was asleep in his bed. Raising his hand, he droned, "In nomine Patris et Filii," dawn, a faint red, kindled stained glass, the deep dark shade of blood draining from a body torn and shredded. Rings, sign of the cross, yes, but Padre would later tell how his heart sank at the end, fangs glinting in the bride's smile, the groom's mouth. I set the book in 1936 because I wanted to bring the couple to San Francisco, and they, where I'm from, and they eventually have a son, Malcolm. And well, anyway, I'll stop there because you can read the book when it comes out. I'm so glad that this is happening in April because my last book is The Coolest Month. It's about, these are all poems written in April. And so it's a very opportune time for me to be able to have this reading. This is the book, The Coolest Month. And thank you so much, Robbi.
second reader today will be Mary V. Moore. Her books include 3 full-length collections and several chapbooks. Dear If, due out from Orison Books in late 2021. Congratulations, Mary. Flicker, published by Dogfish Head, and it won their book prize in 2016. The Book of Snow from Cleveland State University in 1997, and the chapbooks Amanda and the Mansoul from Emory's Chapbook Prize in 2017, and Eating the Light, Sable Books Chapbook Contest in 2016. She's also received several awards for poetry in Terrain, Nell, Nimrod, and Astral Poetry Review. Her recent work appears in Poetry, the Gettysburg Review, Prairie Schooner, 32 poems, the Georgia Review, the Birmingham Poetry Review, the Nasty Woman Poets Anthology, and Fire and Rain Echo Poetry of California, and others. So go ahead, Mary, and let's hear your poems.
Thank you so much, Robbi, for putting this together. And hello, everyone. The first poem, Sumac and Gravel, was written on a retreat at the poet Beth Copeland's tiny house, which is a tiny house on her land in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it was a wonderful time. Sumac and Gravel. Certain stones shaped like flames and arrowheads, fire forms, and those rounded like tongues, clicked and talked, spoke languages we didn't know as we walked, the rhythms unfamiliar as the trees in the new landscape where the wind's motion keeps opening, further openings, where the sumac's absolute red flickers, the fronds blades showing us how flying flames might act if slowed, tethered, and arrayed in rows. Though they resist to careful symmetry and retain flame's willfulness, wavering ribs of fire's body, or mother fire's laundry of tongues hung sideways to dry. I'd like to speak to her. The next poem, Between Now and No, thanks, was composed several years ago when it came to me that I actually was going to die sometime. Between Now and No. The clouds travel in slow-mo over the spruce while I am combing old out of my hair. The sky's poked holes in the clouds. One, not quite a bow or a bird, arcs up, then down, and eyebrows surprise, yours, mine. Another, a clover, poises, then passes. The clouds flow from suppose into not, but the spruce holds its own in 3 dimensions, up, down, left, right, in, out. Its shadows, many-sleeved kimono, dawns, then lengthens on the snow, where something small and foretoed passed overnight. Mother's size 5s, narrow and high arched, barely furrowed the white. The tree blues it now, like old ladies' dye jobs, not indigo, but tamer, like cloud or stone. My hair's bridle as bone, and my feet enlarge, my earlobes elongate. They don't long for what falls between now and the next sorrowful no. Suppose I die on the blown clover among bees, my hair combed by Whitman's grave hair, or on snow under the wing shadows the spruce lets fall, my hair going, crone, not lady, dementia, my whole dimension. Maybe I babble and moan in the consonant's teeth, open the holy mouths of the vowels, oh and ah and you, the suppose, the only dimension I know close to the God my narrow awe allows. Would that be so awful? What vertigo is. The window oak confettis the light, and every iota dances and stutters. Some insider spins the inner ear, light-footed, tranced, dervisher, dervished. She loves the whirlies, the hover, below becoming above, over going under. But even pirouettes lapse into done that's. She's got her limits. She wears me, beret and pencil skirt. I'm her cachet at the sidewalk cafe where the litter has peaked after lunch. A crow beaks the green star on a cup, speaks crow. He's green, blue, black up close, like petrol rainbows. He's Cole's official logo. And the napkins, unorigamied, unwinged, unarmed, legless, are flim-flam, the wind will gust. The day's a kick or a bust, depending on how you adjust the tilt, whether you're the dizzier, the dizzied, or the blur between the X factor. The table's metal squares shed a shadow, gridding the sidewalk, rigid cages and boundaries. A quandary. Who's canary? Who's mine? I can't hear myself think. She rustles, bird in a paperback, weird in the old sense, witchy. She's an itch I can't scratch. Just when I get twitchy, she goes still, like a pause between why and because, act and applause. She's keen to be heard, to be seen. Vertigo is her dance. So I'm married to a philosopher. And so people like Aristotle hang around in our house. Here's immolation and the epigraph from Aristotle's On the Soul. Light is one and the same with fire. We forget that fire is the sire of light, that even the old light bulbs, tungsten trees must burn to make the yellow egg light. But the dry woods catching fire on the succeeding waves of ridges remind us. Juniper and poplar, already torch-shaped, flash into flame, martyrs to our heedless love of fire. They redden and light the smoke they billow for miles. The trees are phoenixes, both pyre and fuel, destined to rise years later from the feathers of ash. But the sun self-immolates, you think, foresighted, as those who can die just once are. I'm thinking time-wise, I have a tiny bit left, and I'd like to read this poem in honor of a very close friend.
Go ahead.
In fact, I've known her for 50 years, who just died. The Tin Shrine for Clodagh Smith. The rain looks sullen, shines, then dulls again, like the Milagro trees, tin metals, little flat cutouts, stars I didn't grow from metal seeds, and birds, angels, moons, 40 flying things, a miracle couldn't cull, so many tin tongues the air can bell. I ring them walking by, who stink of old and liable to die. I bought the Milagro tree, but the roadside shrine you adored grew by a cruel. A thing becomes a prayer there. Coke bottle, dead sister's bracelet, mother's medallion, all the voices belling. And the Virgin's plaster face peels, her left side bruised, brown, or rain ruined. The shrine is named Los Ojos for the springs nearby, earth eyes weeping. Sometimes I hear my Milagros thin, high notes when no body passes them. A lisp, wing beats of a bird I can't see. The rift between is and isn't, a sigh. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. That was wonderful.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Our third reader is Meg Harris, and I'm going to find her and spotlight her somewhere, wherever she is. There we go. There she is. Meg Harris writes for tangible journals as opposed to non-tangible ones and online platforms. She's written for newspapers, funded grants, and plagiarists. I'm not sure. She's funded plagiarists? Not sure what that means. Some of her writing is anthologized, and her chapbook, Inquiry into Loneliness, is an imprint of Crisis Chronicles Press. After decades of seclusion, Harris is a master in the art of isolating. She offered useful tips to others during the pandemic, such as don't go out, take another nap, and eat more chips. I'm sure everybody appreciated that. AWA trained, not sure what that is either. Harris enjoys leading generative writing groups. In 2003, she earned an MFA from Vermont College of Fine Arts. In 2007, after 2 strokes, she acquired a brain injury. First, she relearned walking and talking, and then rediscovered writing. Though not many see it, Meg Harris is intermittently invisible. If you do see her, pay attention. It won't be long before you don't. So go ahead while we see you.
I want to start, can you hear me or?
Yes.
Yeah. I want to start by thanking Glass Lyre Press and Amy Kaye and Angela Narciso, correct? Torres, did I say it correct? Please tell me I did. And Robbi for putting this all together. And it's nerve-wracking for me because I don't do these things quite often. So, but I want to also start with Joan because I was really just so honored to be included in this collection, and even more so to be in it with my friend Joan Colby, who I had been co-judging the Goodreads monthly poetry contest with for years. And I would each month try to dash and get my picks in before her, but invariably she'd beat me and she'd pick the same poems I picked. And so I had to go back and pick different ones. She just was a genius. And I'm just heartbroken that she would have walked on before this book came into print. So I'm so happy that the editors chose to honor her, and just so sad that she's not with us. And so if you'll indulge me, I'd like to begin with a pantoum that I wrote in her honor. I just wrote it this month, and so it might be a little bit rough. But I never got to meet Joan in real life, as they say. I knew her only virtually. So this is called Bloodstock Pantoum for Joan Marie Colby. Excuse me. For over a decade, I knew you, but never met you. Now I never will. Your children say, no, I've got it wrong. Didn't know their mother. Can't possibly. I describe the you I think I know, the muscular understatement, the noiseless power of a bridled horse. Mother, farmer, racer, wife of 60 years, you outlived him by slim months, an eternity to you. Your children say, no, I've got it wrong, didn't know their mother, can't possibly. You'd say you weren't a woman, but a horse. But you're the rider, the poem is the steed. Mother, farmer, racer, wife of 60 years, you outlived him by slim months, an eternity for you. The confidence comes from Bloodstock, a thoroughbred. You'd race to meet a poem anywhere. You'd said you weren't a woman, but a horse. But you're the rider, the poem is the steed. I see you bird watching at the farm with Alan. A breeze lifts the soft mane of your hair. The confidence comes from Bloodstock, a thoroughbred. You'd race to meet the poem anywhere. Of you, I know only what I might, the wild horses of Assateague, which is invention at best. I see you bird watching at the farm with Alan. A breeze lifts the soft mane of your hair. A mare chews grass along the battered fence, and a dozen unseen poems flit around her tail. Of you, I know only what I might, the wild horses of Assateague, which is invention at best. Doctors surmised your immunity was compromised by grief. I recall hot-blooded impatience. A mare chews grass along the battered fence, and a dozen unseed poems flit around her tail. Deft dressage, a nod of the head, tug on the rein, the poem airs, all four above ground. Doctors surmised your immunity was compromised by grief. I recall hot-blooded impatience. Until the end, poems came to you, tender and pliant as foals to their mother. Deft dressage, a nod of the head, tug on the rein, the poem airs, all four above ground. For over a decade I knew you, but never met you. Now I never will. Until the end, poems came to you, tender and pliant as foals to their mother. I describe the you I think I know, the muscular understatement, the noiseless power of a bridled horse. So that's for Joan. And now I'd like to read Joan's poem from this lovely collection, Wasting. Our helper shoulders the bags of salt down the 3 sharp turns of the cellar stairs, hoists and pours into the containers where the hard water is softened. A simple task that once we did unthinkingly, hefting 60-pound bales of alfalfa from rack to loft, from loft to stall, unthinkingly. The accustomed muscles tensing and relaxing, involuntary as walking, up the lane, hauling buckets of water for the horses. Time diminishes us. Collarbones, ribs, the sternum jutting, the skull rising to displace flesh, showing the grimace of finality. We can barely lift ourselves from chairs. Watch every step. We shatter if we fall. Can't turn the stubborn doorknobs. All the simple things we took for granted become perilous as big rambunctious dogs, or flights of steep stairs, or curbs, or icy sidewalks. We hunch with peering for obstructions. Install grab bars, throw out the scatter rugs, think twice, mounting the stepladder. Slowly, our wobbly balance that was never tested in the unthinking years. And that's Joan, beloved Joan. So now I'm going to read from my wee folio. And I don't really have too much to say about the bits that are in it, but I'm going to start with Leo, which is the first poem in my section, which I named Excavation, which was the title poem. Leo. It was a time when winter leaned hard into spring, and the coats of dogs and horses grew thick, and women savored the weight of woolen skirts upon layers of petticoats. At least imagination tells me this was how it was when a sullen and bearded Leo took up his pen, once more having spent his youth on war and peace with Sonia, determined to pass the balance of his life planning the ruin of a woman he once knew, whose love had cut him through. Like me, Tolstoy lifted lines and scenes from his own life, I imagine. Respect was invented to cover the empty place where love should be, Sonia said, closing the door upon him, their lives together. A Russian winter, cold, dark, and bottomless, is a kind of non-time in which a writer might be lost without her own inventiveness or sacrifice or dreams about what lovers do when they're alone. Okay, one down. I'm very nervous. Okay, this next poem was an ekphrastic poem that I wrote after Andrei Remnev's Good Morning, which is not really, I don't think, even the title of the painting. I could never find it again after this poem a day thing I was doing probably a decade ago. So, but that's all I know about it. It was a beautiful painting of a beautiful lady with a lot of birds coming out of her breast. So I don't know if any of you might know it. If you find it, send it to me, please. And it's called Bird Whisperer because if any of you are people who are anxious or have anxiety, like I do, you'll know that it resides a lot for me, it resides a lot here. It has a lot to do with rapid heart rate. So I felt like it kind of reminded me of a hummingbird and how the hummingbird just never stops whirring. And late at night, when you have anxiety, it can be really very much like that. So that's kind of what this poem is about. Bird Whisperer. Here in my thorax, I am holding this pulsing creature, a fist of feathers palmed by gentle pericardium, each flap jet-streamed blood and air on atrial downdraft. This trochilus feller whirs in place, held aloft by the inflow from Vina Cava. And when the night is darkened and motionless and barren of stars, I want to give release to this implacable humming and whisper, be still, be still. And this next one is about one of my favorite topics, which is death and grief. I like to go dark, so. And one of my favorite people who passed away was my sister, who actually was one of those sisters that you find. And the way I found her was my brother married her. And her name was Cindy. And after she passed away, I went to my brother's home and helped him as much as I could and stayed for as long as I could. And then I came back to my home. But that experience gave me this poem. And it's the title poem for the folio. Excavation. My brother digs in the village of his wife. He brushes dust from artifacts, clutches pearls he finds laying around the site. Today, he found her rings, has spoken with the locals, a daughter and a son. He tries to keep from fury. They are young, and this is their first dig. He catalogs the stratosphere of his finds in the dwelling rooms of the decedent. Wardrobe of fine linens, scarves and jewels, her library and sacred recipes. It is believed she collected these stones for use in ritual. Her sewing room is a vast assortment of notions and textiles, curious pastels, funky buttons, and glitter craft glue. Hands gloved, he turns each item over, examining it for further evidence. Before the expedition, he slept on her side of the bed, with her robe, a shroud, scented by her still. He searches for proofs of her. This is her paperclip. Here is a picture of her in the army, her diamond ring. It's as if she only just sat in this leather chair and sipped from this chipped ceramic cup, he tells me, by texting from his location. I am states away. I do not say that she is a matter of record now, an artifact more distant and less comprehensible than the light arriving from a dying star. And I think I'll stop there. I could read more, but I think I'm going to stop there. But thanks so much for listening, and thanks for coming.
Meg, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being
What a
here.
great group of supportive people you are. Thank you.
All right. So all right. There we go. I wasn't unmuted. Los Angeles poet Alexis Rhone Fancher is published in Best American Poetry, Rattle, Hobart, Verse Daily, Plume, Tinderbox, Cleaver, Diode, the American Journal of Poetry, Nashville Review, Poetry East, and elsewhere. She's authored 6 poetry collections, most recently Junkie Wife from Moontide Press in 2018, and The Dead Kid Poems, KYSO Flash Press, 2019. Erotic, New and Selected, from New York Quarterly Books, dropped in March of 2021. Congratulations, Alexis.
Thank you.
And her 7th collection, Entre Chi, will publish in Italian from Edizione Ensemble, Italia, in mid-2021. Her photographs are featured worldwide, including the covers of Witness and the Pedestal magazine. A multiple Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominee, Alexis is poetry editor of the Cultural Weekly. Thanks for being here, Alexis.
Thank you, Robbi. Real pleasure to be here with such fine poets. Beautiful reading. I wanted to thank Aeolian Harp and Angela and Ami Kaye for hosting this and choosing my work. I never met Joan Colby, but I feel like I knew her. Such a brilliant poet, such a fine craftsman of words. I'm going to read her poem, To Live Without You. While you are in the hospital, I practice living without you, sleeping alone with the TV, raving in the background, eating or not eating, imagining all that can go wrong that you would fix, who I could call when the zone valve to the living room fails, remembering how every night we read poetry to each other, the end of that tradition. Nobody will ever rub my back after midnight or take out the garbage cans on the pickup morning. Oh, you are so much more than that. These tasks that terrify me, how the routines of so many years hold sway like the roof over our heads that will need replacing. I believe nothing can replace the days we've squandered like sleepwalkers dreaming nothing will change. It's not death we fear, but that things won't be the same. Sameness like the worn quilt on our bed made by an aunt we never knew. Each thread followed the needle she used to create this pattern. I must rearrange my life to fit something terrible and new. I mean, doesn't get no better than that, you know. Well, I'm going to try. I'm going to read several poems from this marvelous book. And I think I will start with Tonight at Last Call. Jay calls me his brown liquor girl again. And this was written for my best friend, Kate, who died of breast cancer in 2014. Tonight at last call, Jay calls me his brown liquor girl again, his voice dark urgency, like when we were attached. I let him grip my hips, slow dance me back to that lust, to the parking lot, his car, my tube top, a trophy in one hand, a bottle of Southern Comfort in another. He pours that sweet Joplin down my throat, guides my hands between his legs, drives to the Malibu motel with ocean views, vibrating beds, and once more our delicious thrashing. Complimentary KY where the Gideon should be, the insomniac waves rocking us long before my marriage, and now after. When I ask him what part of me he loves best, Jay answers, what's missing, tonguing the place where my nipple had been. He doesn't mind the mastectomy scar, the one my husband can't bring himself to touch. This is called, when I was in my early 20s and graduated college, my sister and I spent 2 years squirreling. We'd squirreled away a trust fund forever, and we spent 2 years spending it, traveling all over Europe, parts of Asia. This one is called When I Dream Serpentine Lost in Istanbul Again. I think I'm going to read that from here. It's always the dream of the elusive snake ring at the Grand Bazaar, heavy rose gold with emerald eyes. It gripped my finger, would not let go. It is for a man, the turban merchant protested, tried to snatch it back. But I loved how it encircled, insinuated itself up to my knuckle, the way the orbs glinted, the entice of its tongue. It spoke of a jeweled future. The merchant, impatient, waited a decision. He wanted too much. Money was tight, adornment, an invitation to be robbed in the confusion of Istanbul's perilous streets. It was a cruel century for a woman on her own. The ring, I told myself, was of no consequence, an extravagance, not a metaphor or a child. Yet my life since that decision, rudderless. The abandoned ring, a portent for each, play it safe in my future. The uncertainty that accompanied every bad choice, every panic dream. Tonight, I'll reconnoiter the bazaar, 18 again, only smarter and self-possessed. The ring's snake eyes will flash an SOS through the labyrinth of narrow stalls, bolts of silk and brocade commingling with complicated carpets and incense and saffron and huge copper pots. I'll find it. I'll buy it and restart my life, erase each timidity, each dull mistake, the maze of shops and elaborate loss, a guilt trip, the scent of sandalwood in the air. Thank you. Let's see. I lost a son when he was 26. He died of a rare cancer. I've written a couple of books about it and a lot of poems. This is one of them. When her son is dead, 7 years. 1. A woman is dancing on the moon, a barefoot adagio of lilting beams. She didn't know the light was so addictive. Her feet are cooking. Her arms are empty. She thinks there is someone to feed. 2. A woman is dancing on a cake plate in her kitchen. Call her angel food. She skirts the frosting's edge, skates straight to the bone white middle. She has a persistent memory. She has a penchant for truth. She has a life that is slipping away. 3. A woman is skating barefoot on her sorrow, her brain awash in the smell of his skin, her arms shackled to the stars, a pirouette of unmet promises, regret. If she blames it on herself, she can fix it. 4. A woman is taking her dead boy's eyes to the moon. She wants to show him the whole earth before he finally gets some sleep. 5. A woman is sleepwalking on the moon, stardust clinging to her heels. She's carrying life inside her, a luminescent, big-bellied Madonna. She once loved a Russian poem about a pregnant girl chasing the moon, but now she's forgotten who wrote it and how the poem ends. She just keeps chasing the moon, and the moon with her big belly, complicit, out in the darkness, lighting the way. This one is also in that sad vein. It's called When I Buried My Son, I Became Someone Else. When I buried my son, I became someone else, the motherhood part written out of my script. I should have felt lighter. An alternative narrative ran alongside the dead one where he wasn't dead. I prefer, it remains the preferable scenario. I buried my son, and now I don't know who walks on eggshells, the living or the dead. And sometimes I think the dead one is me, especially when I look in the mirror. I am coming to terms with mortality, mine, his. I've dumbed down my dreams. If you look hard enough, you'll see the skewed trajectory, the off track, the fizzle. You'll live the devastation, sip the dregs. When my mother died, I wore a lavender dress to her funeral. I stuffed it into the back of my closet where it lived for 30 years. When I found it again, the dress still fit, but I wouldn't be caught dead in it. I have two more, and then I will be finished. This one was written for my friend Karen, whose son died of an overdose at the age of 30. It's called Overdose. No, he did not look natural in his coffin. He is not in a better place. Don't compare your pain to mine. Your dog getting hit by a truck is not the same. You really don't know how I feel. Don't say you're devastated. Does it always have to be about you? Don't ask me about fentanyl. Don't tell me not to dwell. Don't minimize my loss. My boy is not better off dead. For once, let's say it like it is. He did not pass away. He died. There is no plan. Don't say he is at peace. Silence is good. A hug. Tell me you have no words. Or tell me the stories of that summer he rode the bulls in Ogden, all that life tightly in his grip. I'm going to close with a poem I love, a poem that was very hard to write, pretty naked poem. And I wanted to thank Ami and Angela for nominating it for a pushcart. It's called Cruel Choices. When my husband's two grown daughters are in town, the three of them go to the movies or play pool, share dinner every night, stay out late. I haven't seen my stepdaughters since my son's funeral in 2007. When people ask, I say nice things about the girls as if we had a relationship. When people ask if I have children, I change the subject or I lie and say no, or sometimes I put them on the spot and tell them yes, but he died. They look aghast and want to know what happened. Then I have to tell them about the cancer. Sometimes when the older daughter, his favorite, is in town and she and my husband are out together night after night, I wonder what it would have been like if that was me and my boy, if life was fair, and rather than my husband having two children and I none, we each had one living child, his choice which one to keep. Lately, when people ask, I want to lie and say, yes, my son is a basketball coach. He married a beautiful Iranian model with kind eyes, and they live in London with their twin girls who visit every summer. The same twins his girlfriend aborted with my blessing when my son was 18, deemed too young for fatherhood, and everyone said there would be all the time in the world. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to all of you. It's absolutely stunning poems and poets. And I look forward to May 6th for more wonderful poets and poetry. Now, if anybody has any questions for any of the poets, or if any of the poets want to put in a plug for your work or your website or whatever on the chat, please go ahead and do that now. Or
Robbi,
forever hold your peace.
I just want to say something as the audience.
Okay.
It was absolutely mind-boggling. I'm so glad you invited me. I think the poets were awesome. I'm heartbroken with you guys. I'm fascinated by the quality of your work. I'm delighted about the poems for Joan. I'm just, now I shut up and I go away and look forward to the next one.
Thanks, Rosemary. Well, I guess that's it. If nobody has any questions or any comments, then I'll see you all again, probably before May 6th, but I'll definitely see some of you then because you'll be reading and I'll be reading. And thanks so much to my co-host, and I apologize for not recording all of this the way I should have. What there is of it, I will definitely post. So I'll see you again soon.
Robbi, you did a great job. A great, great job. This was so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbi.
Thank you,
It was a great
everyone.
job. I
Thank you,
agree.
Robbi.
Beautiful